Hello, welcome on Media Dialogues. I'm going to look at what's happening in the world of podcasting. While OTT and digital streaming have become the rage, we haven't had a breakout moment for audio streaming yet. But content creators, especially social media influencers, are making it a point to mark their presence on this oral medium. And some notable authors, historians, celebrity life coaches have also been podcasting and have been very well received. To understand podcasting better, I'm talking today to Dhruvank Vaidya. He heads podcasts for Spotify in India and two of their top 10 podcasters in 2022. Please welcome Leeza Mangaldas, who's the Sex Podcast is India's topmost streamed podcast on Spotify, and RJ Balaji, whose Nalana Muruku is at number 6 on that list. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Dhruvank, you're in the studio here in Mumbai. Let's start with you. Give us a sense of the size of this market that we're talking about. I read somewhere that the US has about 100 million listeners and is the #1 market for podcasts. Where is India on that list?
Yeah, so Anuradha, thank you for having me here, and it's wonderful to talk about podcasting because that is one of the big jobs that I do is evangelize podcasts because it's a relatively new medium, about 7 years old in India, but in recent times we've grown phenomenally. And if you look at it today, 1 in 4 music listeners is a podcast listener. It is really at a time where podcasting is getting much deeper into India. It is getting adopted in our Indian languages. And there is a wide range of subjects which are getting explored.
But is there a ballpark figure for the size of this market in terms of active users or listeners?
So a few years back, there were reports that India is the number 3 market globally.
So but that would be third after China?
Yes, third after China. So, but then there are no officially known numbers about the size.
Right. Let me get Leeza in. Leeza, congratulations. The #1 podcast on Spotify in 2022. How does that feel? Let me ask you that typical cliched question. How does that feel?
I am so pleasantly surprised that there was that big an audience for sex education. You know, when I started this content, I really thought that there'd be so few people willing to listen and make this a priority because it just feels like such a stigmatized topic by and large. And I've been doing sex ed content in some form on various media for the last 5 years. But I feel like in the last 2 or 3 years, and I only did this podcast as of the beginning of this year, it's only a year old, there's been so much more receptivity. I feel like there's a time when people are ready for something. And for me, it feels like the time for sex education is now. And so it really feels like fulfillment of a vision that I've had for such a long time, you know, to finally see a number. I mean, even though numbers aren't everything, I feel like to have you know, sort of conclusive evidence that this is important, this is valuable, and people do want this information is extremely gratifying for me as an educator. And I'm also really glad a platform like Spotify was willing to back such content.
You had videos on YouTube, right? Which you started before your Spotify podcast, which you said you started earlier in 2022. Give us a sense of how do you see the audiences that the two very different media have delivered?
So I'm actually on YouTube, Instagram, and now most recently on Spotify. I think that, you know, social media like Instagram was very photo-centric until relatively recently. So YouTube was a platform where when you had something to say or an opinion or something educational to share, it felt like long-form video was your go-to because, you know, how do you take pictures of something? Instagram was like a flex your fashion, beauty, and lifestyle kind of platform primarily when it started. I think it's also evolved to be more conducive to sharing educational content now. I think there was this shift as soon as video was introduced on Instagram as well, where, and I think Gen Z has been a big part of that. The consumer preferences, I feel, of the younger audience is like a bit different. I think relatable is the new aspirational, you know. There was a time when you wanted to be able to look up to the person you're watching, and today I think you want to be able to relate to the person you're watching, not sort of deify them or put them on a pedestal. And I think that's very conducive to creating a community around information, where it's not so much, how you look or how fancy your setup is or whatever, but rather the value you're able to bring with what information you're sharing. And audio takes that one step further, where you're not even viewing someone at all, right? You literally can't see the person. So it does not, I could be in my pajamas in my bedroom, and it really doesn't matter. I think the barriers to accessing like the production becomes so much lower, right? You don't need light studio costumes, makeup, this, that. You literally need a good idea or something you know a lot about or are passionate
Be able
about.
to express it.
And that's really exciting. I think also the listeners' attention is therefore in a strange sort of way more focused.
Interesting. Balaji, you're an RJ, a radio jockey. So FM radio is something that you're very familiar with as a medium, both oral. So how do they compare, and what would you say is the difference for you as someone who's creating for both?
To be honest, I don't see there is any big difference in a radio show or a podcast for an RJ or for a person, someone who's creating content. But the difference lies with people where predominantly radio is listened for songs and an RJ is a disturbance. That's how I used to consider myself for the last 15, 16 years. I've been doing radio for a long time. So I'm taught that I'm a disturbance. I have to present that disturbance in an interesting way. Unlike here in podcast, where people come to the
listen
person,
to you. They want to listen to what you have to say.
So that's the major difference. Like, you don't have any distractions. And Leeza was saying people are focused in an audio medium. That's because, podcast, radio, both are very personal mediums. You're not talking to a crowd, and you're talking to one individual person, and I speak to one person at a time, and they feel it is very personal. That's why I think people are more focused listening to an audio show in a Spotify podcast. They feel it is for them. Generally, unlike in YouTube videos, or it is for mass media. This one is a very personal medium, and there is much radio after 2010 probably hasn't evolved in India. It was struck. I feel as an RJ, I feel in fact sad to say this, but after 2010, we still follow the same format of morning speak something like a primetime news show. 11 o'clock speak to the ladies, 1 o'clock say some gossip about films, evening play a game, night talk to lovers. So that hasn't changed. Yeah, so it is the same for a long time now. And whereas in podcast now you have, a show like Leeza's Sex Education, I don't know if it is still possible in the mainstream media. And even if they want to give something in mainstream media, they'll give probably at 11 p.m. in the night. They think you can talk about it only when the kids are not awake. And
so it
is okay. Yeah.
So give us a sense of what is Nalana Muruku. Am I getting this right? Nalana Muruku.
Nalana Muruku.
Yeah. So what's it about? What do you talk about every time you put it out? I think on December 12th you spoke about the World Cup. And the Moroccan footballer's mother on the field. See, I don't get Tamil, but I heard it, and I could pick up a few of these things because of the other languages that you spatter in.
I actually, you got it like some 10% right, because I don't follow football, and I feel handicapped when people talk about football all the time. Manchester United, Chelsea, I feel, okay, you don't even talk about Santosh Trophy, but you talk about English football. So I'm that person. But suddenly this football got me hooked, this World Cup, and I was saying I want Morocco to win the World Cup, and I moved on to something else. But generally this Nalna Murukku, it's a watch. I agree on Leeza saying that, being relatable is very, very important today, then being looked up to. Like Nalna Murukku is a very relatable show. So there is no format. There is generally, like, every show has a format, right? I don't have a format. I speak what happened that week to me personally. And that has been the major strength, because to be in a top 10 list of Spotify in India, and to be from a regional language, that is, I cater to a particular sector of people, and still being able to be part of that list is, I think, being relatable adds to that. So Nalna Murukku is a very relatable show that speak about life and my life experiences, people that I've come across. So it's a non-formatted show, and I'm happy doing it. And I also I believe it's easy to be in the list or to do a good show for a year or 2 years, but I want generations to grow listening to me. I want them to make this as an habit. So I've been doing that in radio, and I hope
Right.
to continue
Okay,
that
right.
with
So,
podcast.
right. So that's a grand ambition to have generations tuning into this. What's the kind of ecosystem that podcasters are finding? You tried to give us a sense of the audience earlier. What about being able to sustain it also? What are the revenues we're looking at? Is it subscription only, but on Spotify, or is it advertising and subscription? How does it work, Dhruvank?
Yeah, so let me give you a sense of the ecosystem we are building. So on Spotify today, content comes from 3 places. One is something that we call our originals and exclusives.
Yeah.
That is the content we commission and we put out there.
And those will be highly produced.
They would be highly produced. They would be very topic or subject specific. And that is what we are putting out as lighthouse shows. Then there is any other distribution platform can use podcasts, use Spotify as a distribution medium. So there is all third-party content comes on Spotify. And finally, we have a UGC platform called Anchor. So any individual creator
Can use
sitting
that
in their bedroom.
Yeah. So
on
is
their
that what
phone.
Balaji is perhaps using?
No, Balaji is a much more advanced user, but there are a lot of individuals who sit on their phone, create a podcast and upload it, not only on Spotify, but across multiple platforms.
How do I make money off this if I'm in the business of content creation? And then how do the platforms make
Correct.
money?
So if you're a content creator, your primary means of revenue is advertising.
Yeah.
We as Spotify also either we commission a show, or if we sign up as an exclusive, then we give you a license fee for your show. So that is a very significant revenue stream for the creator. The creator also makes money by, let's say, having a Patreon page, doing shout outs for brands, stuff like that. Anything that a regular digital creator on any other platform does. Coming to Spotify, for podcasts, advertising is the primary revenue stream.
And have Indian advertisers and marketers really woken up to the potential of podcasts?
So we are having a lot of conversations. On Spotify, we haven't opened up advertising yet. It's likely to happen next year. But yes, whoever we have started having conversations, they're very excited. I think some of the reasons for that, as Balaji and Leeza mentioned earlier, is that a podcast is a very intimate medium. Like when you're listening to it, you're very engrossed in what you're listening. And it's very hard to forward, because the phone is either in your pocket or somewhere else. Which means you are getting a very attentive audience. You're getting an audience which is very sharply focused. Like if you're listening to Empire, you know you're talking to history lovers. So all those features make podcasting very attractive to advertisers. And the third thing is cost. It's not very expensive to create a show. Which means if you are a B2B, if you want to do B2B outreach to, let's say, your SME clients, podcasting is a great way to do it.
Okay, we'll take a quick commercial break, but let's dig deeper when we come back. I'm going to be continuing this conversation on learning to understand podcasts better. Stay with us.